Overcoming addiction. Hey everybody, what is good? This is the second episode of the Under the Hat podcast. And I wanted to talk about a subject that I think, I hope I can at least inspire some people with through my own experience, and really talk about overcoming addiction, and maybe give some pointers on what I've been through, and hope to maybe inspire some things in anyone who's struggling with being in that destructive kind of place with any kind of substance, and who's stuck in what I call the feedback loop, basically the loop of just being stuck in that cycle of ingesting, alcohol, smoking weed too much, doing other stuff socially, whatever, cocaine, opiates, all of these things that are all around us, especially in the music world, of course, and in Hollywood and in the acting world, where I've been for a long time. I've been in those universes since I moved to LA, but it's really everywhere. And it's not even so much that I want to talk about any specific drug, though, alcohol seems to be the thing that's most permeated in our culture. And now marijuana to a point, because it's legal and everybody seems to smoke. I wanted to talk about, my experience with addiction. I've been back and forth in my life between long stints of being completely and totally hyper-focused and sober, and stints where I have been on that edge, dancing with the devil, so to speak. And I want to talk very honestly and open about that experience in my life first, and talk about what has helped me overcome those places completely on my own. I've never joined AA or NA or any of those types of things. I've always managed to quit things on my own, through sheer will and determination, I would say. But there's reasons for that I dug deep and was able to metamorphosize into reality. I think, everybody struggles with it, man. We're addictive creatures by nature, I think. And I think it's in all of us to be addicted to something. I don't believe that it's just a certain type of person. I think certain events and certain traumas and certain personality dynamics can exponentiate that. But I think everybody, to an extent, it has addictive personalities. I think it's manipulated every day in propaganda, in advertising. It's manipulated now through the internet, through social media, through all sorts of means. We all get addicted to things. Some of them are positive addictions that bring a lot of good energy and light into our lives, and many can be very dark addictions. And addictions can be both. There's a yin to a yang with everything in life. I don't care what it is. Everything has a positive and a negative, down to an atom. It's everything about life requires balance. So everything has a pro and a con. The internet has pros and cons. Go down the list, right? You can find positives and negatives in anything. And I'd say the same thing with addictions. I think some addictions are very positive addictions, whatever they may be. Maybe a passion for music, or collecting certain things, or a certain sports activity, or sometimes even like good teas and caffeine that give you the energy to do things and get things done. And then there's dark addictions that do the opposite. But a lot of times the darker addictions are basically a form of escapism. At least they start out that way. And a way of numbing ourselves from other things in our lives that we haven't dealt with, or that we're not manifesting, inspiration, passion, these types of things. If you lack that, it's very easy to get into the cycle of just being kind of an escaped drunk every night, and just going into that place. It's such an easy loop to get into. And it becomes a very hard one to get out of, especially if you're not aware of it or why you're there. So I want to start by talking about my experience a little bit. When I grew up, I had really, I love my family, love my parents. My parents are good people. But, when I was younger, as most parents do, they got divorced when I was like 10 years old. Things got effed up. I ended up in Catholic boys' school and then, not getting along with step parents and, everything going to hell. And then, meeting the wrong people when I was like fucking 14, 15 in that dark place, which, trust me, the people you surround yourself with is a big deal. And I'll get more into that. But, especially when you're a teenager, whatever social group you land into is almost not even, but it's like it's literally fate, right? And sometimes you end up around the wrong people at the wrong time. And when I was 14, 15, that happened to me. And of course, you end up drinking and you end up smoking weed, you end up trying other drugs and doing other drugs. And that was me in high school, man. I mean, from about 15 to 16 just went woo due to, home life breaking down and issues with the parents and with life and with, school and maybe having the wrong teachers at the wrong time. And, all those things matter and they compile. And so when you're a teenager, you're maneuvering on choppy seas, to say the least, and you're very affected by your peer group. And I started hanging out with older guys that were pretty wild and pretty destructive. And there is that side of that in my family. I've got a lot of cousins and uncles and people that were hard partiers around me as I was growing up. I was around a lot of addiction, a lot of crazy behavior. So that came out of me very easily when I went through my own struggles. It was almost like the people I looked up to around me that I thought were cool, that's what they did to deal with shit, right? That was the whole escapism. And of course, along with that came rebellion and music and everything. I went to religious schools all my life. I was in Baptist elementary school, Catholic junior high, and part of high school. And I kind of reached that breaking point too with rebellion of religion and kind of that whole mantra of stuff that I was questioning from about 5th grade, I think. All of that affected me too. So I had this culmination. We all can go back and look at our teenage years and see, well, what led me to this crazy place? And I'm sure we've all got our pieces we can fit together, right? Of whatever it was, whether it was our parents, whether all these things, right? But bottom line is by the time I was 16, I was out of my house. I was on my own and I was crazy. I was wild and I was on a one-way trip to death. And almost died multiple times, whether it was me and a friend flipping his truck and somehow surviving it, when we should have been killed, to other people's, madness, trying drugs that were, super strong and that almost killed me. All those things I went through over about a 3-4 year period. And I ended up really even before 21, I'd say right around 2021 was a very volatile time for me. It got really dark, and I was drinking a fifth of any kind of alcohol I could get my hands on a day. I was an absolute madman. I was completely wild, completely crazy, and just didn't care about anything. It was just fucking full on 11 and go. And every day was a party. Every day I was partying with some group of people that were just as mad as me. And, it got pretty crazy. And the one thing that really, really, I think, broke through that for me personally was this love for music I had from a very young age, and certain bands, certain musicians, certain lyrics really resonated with me. Two I can think of right out the batter. Of course, I talked about in the last episode Neil Peart of Rush. A lot of his lyrics, like Marathon, and words of inspiration and finding will to be and live, and finding that passion for life. That music, even in that crazy phase, I would have these great escapist moments with music, and it just broke through all that dark haze that I was in, and there was this passion for not only playing music. I had started playing music because of my influences, but also to start finding that inspiration to live, to find the bigger, better me, to rise up out of this fucking dark kind of hole that I was in, that I was falling into slowly, and also get away from all these dark, destructive people that were around me. Because, I always try to tell people, one of the most important things you can do if you really, really want to end the destructive cycle, you have to absolutely get rid of the wrong people around you. It's one of the most hardest things to do, I think, because of the bonds and the ties and the social dynamic, and also where you live. For me, I think it took a lot of that, and even eventually me leaving the town I was from, I think, to really finally conquer it entirely. But ultimately, who you surround yourself with matters. And I was in that place, but the music was somehow breaking through to me, whether it was the lyrics of Bad Religion or the lyrics of Rush, certain bands that had really intellectual writers that were saying things that were helping me see through the haze, is the best way I can put it. Because when you're living in that loop, you don't even realize what a haze you're in. That's the best way I can describe it. In the destructive loop, when you're drinking every day or every night, smoking weed all day is the same thing. I don't care if it's natural. If you're high all the time, you're still high all the time. You're in a haze, and it's one that you get comfortably numb in, as the song lyric goes, which is very true. And you're going through life without really realizing it's this softening of reality with this hazy kind of goggle on, that you're not really seeing it for what it is. And the more that you do that, it also brings out parts of yourself that hurts relationships with good people. Sometimes when you surround yourself with dark energy, you start repelling good energy without even realizing it, and blowing off the people that you should have in your life and keeping people in your life that you shouldn't. And it's a really tough thing, and I think you kind of have to break away from the cycle, even for periods, to see it. I always tell people, even if you don't want to sober up entirely, like if there's nothing wrong with drinking if it doesn't cause you negativity. Some people drink in their lives, and for the most part, it doesn't cause them much negativity, and they can do it very controlled, and they just, for whatever reason, it doesn't end up in the dark cycle. But most people do end up somewhat in that cycle, and I do think drinking all the time does distort reality to the point that you aren't seeing certain things, and it's hard to progress, even if you are enjoying drinking every day and it's not really causing you much problem, or smoking weed all day, which are the two big ones, because everyone does it all the time. It's just those are the two socially accepted things. Of course, there's the bigger drugs, coke, opiates. I'll get into that later, but those are the two big ones, man: drinking and weed. And everybody, they've got the California sober people now that smoke weed all day. It's the same fucking thing. I believe that everybody should take a period of their lives more than once. I would say 3, 4, 5 years, that long, and not do any substances at all, and find other ways to rationalize life and deal with life, and also just to start seeing beyond that haze and seeing yourself. You see yourself for what you really are. It gives you a chance to do self-inventory on a very deep level, and it gives you a chance to progress. I think when you live in the loop of drinking and smoking weed all the time, you don't progress. You just end up in this cycle. But you also are almost in a dreamscape in a way, to where you think you are, but you're really not. It's almost like this parallel universe from reality that you kind of just morph yourself into. And so for me, when I was in my early 20s and on the verge of, I saw people around me that were older. I started seeing what was happening to them, and I could see in the future, like, and I also family members that were getting sick or dying from heavy abuse of addictive substances, especially alcohol. And I saw myself, and I said, if I continue this path, I could see where I was going, and I had this inspiration to live. A lot of it was from music. I had a passion. I was hell-bent on, being the best musician I could be, following the paths of my heroes, and making, music the rest of my life. I had such a passion for it. And I can't stress enough, one of the most important things for quitting the destructive cycle is you have to have a passion or something that inspires you. Whatever words you want to use, passion, inspiration, whatever cliche. But you have to have something, a goal you're working towards, or something that when you get up in the morning inspires you. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be anything from a new relationship in your life, a child, to any type of sporting activity, to a hobby, to a career-based path. Whatever it is, you have to have something that inspires you. I can't stress it enough, man. You've got to have that. I don't think you can successfully stop the cycle without that. I think that's one of the most important things that people don't realize. So I had that inspiration. It was something that allowed me to, within myself, manifest. And look, it took me a couple of years of, I'd quit for a couple months, I'd fall, I'd quit, because I was still hanging out with the wrong people. That matters. When you're hanging out with the wrong people, it's really easy eventually to be like, oh, well, you have to 100% really want it. That's the other thing. If only a part of you wants it and you're hanging out with the wrong people, you're gonna start again in a couple of months. You might quit for a few weeks, but as soon as you start feeling a little better, you're gonna just, oh man, I want to fucking party. And it's gonna happen. It really takes a lot of passion and inspiration and will to do it, especially once you're deep in the loop. Once you've gotten in there, it's once you're in the destructive cycle, the dark haze, it takes a lot, man. But luckily, after a couple of years, I was able to find that inspiration. And then for probably about 10 years of my life, and maybe even a little longer, I was completely 100%. I didn't do anything. I wouldn't take pills. I wouldn't even take cough syrup. I just was so hyper-focused. And after a couple of years of that, I think it takes 2 or 3 years. I hate to say it takes a while, but those natural highs, I realized that, and I remind myself this all the time, it's one important point to consider is, that there's that saying, I felt like a kid again. People say that, man, I felt like a kid again. Well, what were you not doing when you were a kid? You weren't getting fucked up. Your body makes these natural endorphins and highs, and they really enhance everything you experience in a much more real way. But once you end up in that cycle, it takes 2 or 3 years to get a lot of that back. So a lot of people slip up the first couple years and just give up because they don't ever feel great again. They feel good, their health gets better, but they don't feel that natural high, because we get that so much when we're kids and when we're not ingesting substances and when everything's new and fresh, and so you gotta wait a while. You gotta be patient through the process too. But luckily I got to that point, and for years I was like just absolutely on fire as far as getting things done. Everything that I accomplished in my life, songwriting wise, band wise, life wise, money wise, everything was done in that cycle where I was out of all of that, when I was completely and totally hyper focused. And for me personally, we're all different. We have to recognize what's within us. Within me, I recognize that I'm my best in that state. And that's, because of the type of environment I come from, the genes I have, what I grew up around, what I went through. There's that volatile aspect of myself that can easily fall back into that cycle if I'm not careful. But sometimes we lose sight of that over time, and we can get kind of cocky, and that's what happened to me. Flash forward about 10 years, and I had actually just formed my band White Wizard, and it had been such a journey to that point, so much struggle and so much like building and so much like, I left my hometown with nothing and lived out of a van for 2 years in LA and just hung out in music stores all day and music venues at night. I had my shit in a storage unit and a fucking health club membership for showers. And I did that for 2 years. It was actually extremely fun because I was, young enough and I was a guy and it was easy and I had a van that was comfortable. I could park it wherever. And that's really how I got integrated into the LA scene. But I could never have survived that had I been getting fucked up all the time. I was completely and totally focused and hungry and desiring music. And so it was a really special time for me because I was in that state of mind. But, by the time I got to the point of forming my band, there's always a nostalgia for the good. It happens with relationships too after we break up with someone for a while. Like, there's a part of us that just remember the good shit. We all do it as humans. And you start missing the highs. You start thinking about the time you were in fucking Mexico, fucked up on tequila, and all this rad shit happened. And you start thinking about those crazy highs that you had with the booze and with the partying. You don't think about the other 80% or 90% of it that were lows, but that 10 or 20% that was euphoric and fun, your mind just goes back to that. And I started convincing myself that the main problem was the amount that I was doing, that I was self-destructive, that I was doing way too much, and that I could be the controlled drinker to where I would just drink 2 or 3 beers. I didn't have any urge to go back to weed at that time. It was just drinking. But I remember just having a couple of beers again. And it was amazing at first because it was like discovering drinking for the first time again. I'd been so away from it. And so at first, I was kind of ignoring the potential of what could happen down the road from the past. And I've got to be honest, throughout about a 5-year period after that, I made a promise to myself I'd only drink beer and wine or champagne. I wouldn't drink any hard alcohol, which for the most part I did, aside from maybe 2 nights. And that I wouldn't do it every night, and that I would be super controlled with it. But as that went on in that 5-year period, 2 drinks turned into 3 or 4. And it doesn't take much to where the Jekyll to the Hyde is coming out, or the Hyde to the Jekyll, however you want to look at it. And, I realized that when we get in that state, we do change. And, I've got a dark sense of humor already. I've got dark sides that I still at that point hadn't dealt with. I think I have now, but back then I hadn't, even though I'd been sober several years. I think I'd been so driven on my path, I'd never really dealt with what happened in the past that led me to those years of 15 to 21 of just, being on the edge of death and crazy and mad and doing crazy shit and experimenting with everything. I think that, there's things that we all don't deal with that linger inside of us that we have to face and deal with, I think, at some point in our lives, or otherwise those slippery slopes are always there. And throughout the time with my band that was good from 2008 to 2013, I think I was very, very controlled. But I think that still sides of me came out when I would drink that I look back on. I'm like, why did I deal with a situation like that? Or why was I like that? Or whatever. That I don't think I would have been that way had I been sober. I think I would have dealt with something in a better way, in a more reasoned way. And I think that's the other thing, that if we are in that cycle with drinking especially, but also weed, it can start leading to us dealing with situations in life in ways that we don't have a clear, focused, balanced view on. And we don't deal with things the right way, and we make mistakes. So that can lead to a lot of that. And, you know, and I went through a lot with my band over that 5-year period from 2008 to 2013, which is a big portion of the White Wizard story that I'll be continuing to tell in more chapters. I've only told the high-speed GTO story so far. I'm getting to the rest of it. And it'll probably be an audiobook. And I definitely had a really challenging time in that band with the personalities and with certain people and with certain things and circumstances. And granted, not a lot of things were really screwed up with how people were to me, to the band, and who they were as individuals themselves. And I carried a lot of anger for a long time. But, you know, now that I've looked back on it, had I been not in that cycle again, even though I wasn't as destructive as before, I thought that I was totally fine because I wasn't being like I was when I was younger, drinking hard alcohol all the time, doing a bunch of heavy drugs, partying. So it's like I thought I was okay, but the reality is it still was bringing something out that was, you know, not allowing me to deal with reality in the way that I think I needed to. Because I was doing it too much, even though I didn't think I was. You know, I still was, I was only drinking 4 beers or 5 beers, but I was doing it every night. You know what I mean? Like, so it doesn't matter if it's disguised as fucking, you know, cheap whiskey or beer or whatever. Alcohol is alcohol. Wine as well. All the bourgeois wine culture I grew up around, you know, it's like you're still drunk. You know, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, if it tastes good or it's got a complexity to it. You're still getting fucked up, man. So there's a difference between going on a Saturday evening and treating alcohol like ice cream as a treat, as opposed to treating it as a daily ritual. I think there's a big difference between those two things, and those are very important things to quantify. I think someone that works all week and on a Saturday night goes and splits a bottle of wine with their significant other or friends or whatever, and has a good time and treats it, as I said, like a treat, like ice cream or something. There's nothing wrong with that. That's someone who's not in the cycle. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. So let's differentiate that, because I think a lot of times people, when they quit everything and go into a place of sobriety or trying to not be in that place, they just suddenly say, well, everyone that drinks is bad. No, that's not the case at all, actually. Everyone that drinks is not bad. Some people drink completely controlled, don't do it that often, or do it in a way that's not harmful to them, and it doesn't distort anything in their lives. But I'd say those are the minority in the social dynamic of the world we live in. I'd say the majority of people are somewhat in this cycle. So that said, you know, in 2013, my band took a really hard crash, and I haven't talked much about it over the years. I kind of took the high road on it. I will eventually, finally. I just didn't really want to get in the sandbox with assholes and fight and everybody just the worst of themselves coming out and throwing shit back and forth. That never really appealed to me, and it still doesn't. But ultimately, I went into a really, really dark place then, I think, and I slowly slid into it, to where, you know, I was allowing myself to drink. I started smoking weed again, and I started popping Vicodins, because I'd take them once in a while on the road when my back was tight, and I started taking them more, and then started snorting Oxycontins and drinking and smoking weed, and I got into a place for about 3 or 4 years that was pretty bad. I didn't think so. I was functioning, so I thought everything was fine. I was, you know, doing whatever I was doing. I wrote another White Wizard record, put it out, and started another project, etc. But I didn't realize that over that period that I had just slipped back into just a more controlled, mature version of what I was when I was a teenager. I was at parties with actor friends doing coke, and pretty soon that led to me getting some and having it and doing it at home, and after drinking fucking 4 beers or 4 glasses of champagne or whatever, and it really affected the way that I dealt with everything in my life. I didn't deal with my personal relationships well. My life choices I made at times were quite poor, I think, looking back, because I wasn't thinking with any sense of reason. I was just in that fucking loop again. I was in that cycle, man. And we all get into it to various degrees. And this time it was pretty bad. And I realized, I woke up one day, and I realized, I said to myself, I'm just done. I drank all the alcohol I'd wanted to in my life. I felt like, what am I doing this to myself for? I thought about everything that I've done in my life. The thing is with drinking, I wasn't drinking till like 8 o'clock at night. I thought since I was sober during the day, that's a very key thing. I wasn't doing anything until nighttime. So it was like, I thought if I was sober during the day, that I'm being controlled. I'm just doing it at night. It's not like it's all day, because other people around me that were like that, I would look down on them like, oh, you're drinking all day. You're fucking smoking weed all day. Like, how do you not get things done? You're not focused. You should save that for, at night after all your shit's done, blah, blah, blah. That was my psychological place of convincing myself, oh, okay, it's okay, I'm fine. When in reality, I was still in the same cycle. I was staying up till 3 or 4 a.m. and sleeping until fucking, 11. I was not, functioning in a way that was super positive, I think. I was in purgatory in a lot of ways. I think that's what you end up in, is like a state of purgatory, like a stalemate. It's just your life is in a feedback loop. And so in a lot of ways, but I realized that anything that I've gotten done, either in that 10 years I was sober before or even since, in this next 10-year cycle, that in this cycle, everything that I was getting done as a songwriter, anything I accomplished that I was proud of, it was during the day when I was sober. Once I was partying, it was like full escapism. I was listening to music or records or doing crazy shit, whatever. But, that escapism, I wasn't dealing with things. The band breakup in 2013 really fucked me up, and I think I didn't deal with it, of why it happened, and really the entire White Wizard experience, and facing everything that I went through in it, and really, reconciling it in my mind, and then dealing with all the stuff from my childhood, right? And then, of course, the White Wizard thing was tough, because that was the passion and the dream that got me through everything, and I finally was there, and to see it fall apart like that was really, really hard for me psychologically. It was devastating, man. And I'm not saying it was, I had to reconcile a lot of things like fault and anger and grudges and things that manifested in me. And so when I decided to finally like break out of the cycle this time for good, I 100, it was like I just woke up and I was ready. But I think that the work I'd done the 10 years previous of being sober and still having that passion for music and for life was vital. I was also in a very bad motorcycle crash that almost killed me and almost ended my music career. My wrist was shattered. It's a miracle I'm playing again. That's a whole other story. But that also affected me on a very deep level. I went through a very bad divorce and split, and that also affected me very deeply. And it was just that time. It was time to really face everything, and to do it in a way that allowed me to manifest positive energy and progression. And that was my determination. I still had passion. As I said, the most important things to successfully get the hell out of this loop for anyone who's struggling with it. Number one, you've got to have inspiration and passion. Whatever it is, man. Art, love, just sports, whatever it is, you have to have something. Collecting something, cars, whatever. Anything that's a passion that inspires you when you wake up in the morning is so damn important. I can't stress that enough. You got to have that to break the cycle. And I had that in spades still. Music is still everything to me. I have other things as well, and I have, a wonderful relationship, and I have, good people in my life now. That's the other thing. The second thing, I had to get away from the wrong people. I was in the wrong relationship and around the wrong people, and had the wrong people in my life musically as well as personally. And I had to change that too. So I had passion and inspiration, and I recognized I had to change the people that were around me. So I did that. The third thing, I think this is really, really, really important, and everybody should really think about this one. This isn't even really for someone who's in the destructive cycle. It's for really any human, but I think especially for us that maybe went through bad experiences with other human beings in our lives. You have to rise above and let go of grudges and negative energy and anger. You just got to let it go. All of us have had people that have fucking wronged us, that have used us, that have been opportunists, or family members, parents that fucked up, people around us when we were younger, teachers that were fucking horrible, that made us lose our passion for school, which happened to me multiple times. You got to forgive your parents for fucking up. You got to forgive those people, and you got to forgive the people that wrongs you. Even if not forgive, you just got to let go of your anger. You don't necessarily have to forgive in the sense of going and giving them a hug and a kiss or something, that whole thing. That's a very Christian ethos thing. You don't have to necessarily do that, but for yourself, it depends on what they did. I mean, that's a, whole other subject, but within yourself, you've got to let go of it. Jon Leon had the best quote, one of my favorite quotes of all time. The best revenge is a life well lived. I'll say that again. The best revenge is a life well lived. Fuck them. It doesn't matter anymore. All parents fuck up. You got to forgive your parents. It's just, it's there's no rule book. There's no textbook on parenting. Parents screw up left and right. If you had parents that didn't screw up, that were great, you're very lucky. You probably didn't end up in the destructive cycle. I got to be honest. Most people don't end up there if they had parents that were super, together and really just, did a hell of a job all their lives. But they're in the minority, man. That's not usually the case. You got to forgive the parents. You've got to forgive the past. You manifest more negative energy. People that tried to hurt you, or even that still want to hurt you. There's people that want to see me fail all over the place. I know exactly who they are. Am I going to keep focusing on them wanting me to fail? Or am I just going to let it go and say, you know what? I'm going forward with positive energy. I'm not even going to worry about them anymore. The past is the past. I'm just going to focus on me. What can I do better? Because in every falling out, usually we did something that we could have done. There's always something we could have done better. Usually in falling outs, there is fault on both sides. It's a lot of times there is one person who's the instigator, who was the truly evil person in it. But you still just got to focus on yourself and say, what can I do better? How can I become a better person from that? And ultimately, how can I manifest really great relationships in my life? Learn from that. And just not let it keep you up at night. You can't let these people live rent-free in your head, man. You just can't. You gotta let it go. And if you can forgive them, great. Just forgive them. You don't have to become best friends with them, but forgiveness is always great if you can do it, depending again on what it was that they did or what you went through with those particular people. But the bottom line is you have to let go, because as long as you dwell on it, as long as you let it make you angry, you're manifesting negative energy, and they are actually still helping keep you from progressing. Because as long as you manifest negative energy, you're not going to progress, especially if it leads to destructive behavior or into a dark cycle of not, of just constantly ingesting substances. So you have to 100% let go of negative energy. I can't stress it enough. I think it's probably the hardest thing to do and the most important thing to do, along with surrounding yourself with the right people and having a passion, having something you truly live for. Fourth is, I think you have to embrace health and loving yourself and your body and wanting to better it, to have longevity and to feel good every day. I like waking up feeling great. I want to feel good every morning that I wake up. I don't like hangovers. I want to feel good, like I'm going to go fucking kick ass. And, I like to go run in the morning if I can. I like to work out a bit, stretch, whatever. I make a smoothie that I love, and I eat really well, and I'm very into food. Food is another thing you can be very passionate about. And I think, there's the whole wine thing with eating, but I honestly think food becomes more interesting when you're out of that cycle. And the exploration of food and eating with good people and the preparation of food and everything is another thing that I think is become kind of a new addiction for me. That's a positive addiction. I drink a lot of tea. I'm really into Japanese teas and exotic teas and matcha drinks and hojicha that I make. And I make all this stuff myself, and I love it. I consume it every day, and it's become a passion. And it's a positive passion. I get energy from it, and it's I play guitar, I write. It's great. Not being in that cycle at night allows me to be focused on my relationship. Everything about my relationship means so much to me. And I have a small group of great people in my life, artistically and personally. And I'm so focused on nurturing those relationships now. Whereas before, being in that cycle, you don't care. You don't care to care. You just, it's hard to describe, but if you've been there, you're in this parallel universe of just not really nurturing what's important around you and the relationships around you, because you're slowly destroying yourself, and in turn it makes you put out destructive energy to everything around you. Those are the best pieces of advice I can give, I think, is those four. I think you got to have those things, along with just wanting it 100%. You have to want it 100%, but ultimately have a passion or an inspiration in your life that makes you get up every day, that you truly, that keeps you driven. Very important. Surround yourself with the right people. Very important. Let go of past grudges and anger and negativity. Forgive people. Move on from bullshit. The best revenge is a life well lived. Don't ever forget that. And number 4 is your health. Mental, physical. Focus on it and care about it. Whatever you need to do for that, whether it's stretching every day, whether it's meditation, whether it's eating well, whatever you need to do, but really care about your body and yourself. Care about yourself and your longevity. I think those are the 4 most important pieces of advice I can give, and I wanted to talk about that a bit because I've been through it, man, and I know some friends of mine and people out there right now that I care about are still going through that shit. And it's always, you got to dig deep sometimes. I know we go through shit, man. We lose a loved one. Something really bad happens. And you got to have the constitution to be able to deal with that storm too. And that's what surrounding yourself with good people means. When shit gets bad, you want to have people you can lean on, and people that truly care about you, that you love and that care about you. And I think it takes being out of that cycle to recognize who those people are and hold them close and keep them there at all times. And ultimately that's what's led me to where I'm at now. I'm extremely happy. I'm extremely focused. I'm extremely grounded, and I'm in a very, very special place right now, mentally and spiritually and physically. And I'm surrounded by lovely people, and I'm doing the best art of my life, and I'm still driven and crazy and passionate. I'm a lifer in music. I'm never going to stop. I've recognized that about myself. I'm definitely a gypsy that's going to probably, die by the roadside with my guitar in my hand. There's no question about that. But, I'm going to do it with passion and longevity and a love for life. And that's where I'm at now. And if anybody ever needs advice, man, don't hesitate to DM me, man. I'm always willing to talk to people about that. And I know what it's like. It's a very lonely struggle, but it's a hell of a accomplishment to be able to lift yourself out of it, because I think it really is probably the hardest thing to do, because it's so easy to get in and so hard to get out of the cycle. And so I wish everyone nothing but good vibes. This podcast is going to keep going. I'm going to talk about all sorts of stuff. This is just one of a million subjects. I'm going to talk about music stuff next. Yeah, man, just everybody keep kicking ass, enjoy life, and I wish nothing but the best. Rock on, man.